This is Gene Montrostel, and welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast recorded live to tape from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 538, originally aired September 7th, 2022. Hi everyone, I hope this finds you well wherever you are in the world and whatever time of day you're getting a chance to listen to this. Thanks for spending a little time with me today. Today's podcast is going to be a little bit different. Instead of teaching a specific topic or interviewing an expert or just doing some tapping, I want to tell you a story. And that story is about how me, a person who basically spends his professional life helping people to eliminate self-sabotage, spent 6 months this year self-sabotaging myself in a spectacular way. And so if this is your first introduction to the Tapping Q&A podcast, I want to welcome you, but just know that this is a little bit of a different episode. Before we jump into that story, 2 quick announcements. First of all, I want to send a big thank you and a shout out to all of the supporters of the Tapping Q&A podcast. These are people who every single month voluntarily contribute so that the show can come out, so you can receive these amazing free resources. Every single month, we take 10% of those donations, we put them into Kiva, and we loan them to small business owners all over the world. And the really cool part is those loans are paid back and we re-lend them out. So I'm now in a circumstance where every single month, the first week of the month, I get to choose 68 small business owners all over the world and make a small loan to them to help them to create lives that are transforming their future. If you'd like to support the podcast, all you need to do is go to tappingqa.com/support. And I just want to send a big thank you to everyone who supports the podcast. Secondly, we have a free 10-part guide on how you can use tapping to eliminate self-sabotage. All you need to do is go to tappingqa.com, click on that big blue button. If you happen to be on the website right now, if you click on the blue button in the upper right-hand corner, we will get you that 10-part guide so you can eliminate self-sabotage and not be like me in the story I'm about to tell you. So this is the story. I'm going to step back a couple of years and this slowly work our way into it. So 2 summers ago, in the middle of a global pandemic, I was walking around my neighborhood here in Brooklyn, and I live in a very fun neighborhood, which means that it's an expensive neighborhood. And I live in a place that is an amazing deal for the neighborhood that I'm in, but I really love where I am. And when I had moved to New York originally, I didn't even look in Manhattan because I didn't think I could afford to live in Manhattan. And I ended up thinking, as I was wandering around the neighborhood, because we were in the middle of a global pandemic and real estate was doing what real estate was doing 2 years ago, I thought, I wonder if I could actually afford to buy a place in New York. What would that require me to do? And so as I thought about it, I realized that the business that I was currently running 2 years ago was a business that I had basically maxed out. Most of my income came from working with clients one-on-one, and it felt like I'd reached a ceiling on what I could charge in a reasonable way, and I didn't want to be in a circumstance where I was working lots more hours to afford a place to live. And so as I thought about it, I started wondering, what would I need to do to transform my business in such a way that I could do that? And I realized the answer to that was leveraging my time, either through group programs or digital products, because it's easy enough to know that when you have a digital product, it doesn't require you time to show up because once the product's created, you put it out there. Now, 10 or 12 years ago, 15 years ago, there was this myth on the internet where you make money while you sleep. And it's not really that easy. Just because you make something amazing doesn't mean people find it. It's not if you build a better mousetrap, they will beat a path to your door. It's if you build a better mousetrap, you then need to become really, really good at communicating to other people the fact that you've created a better mousetrap and how it'll make their life better and how they can get their hands on it. And so over the course of a year or so, I started doing all of these micro experiments. And so if you were on my mailing list, you saw those micro experiments, the Art of Delivery monthly class and the 5 a.m. Action Club and the Upper Limit Buster class and the ID Transformational Retreat and the Limiting Belief Challenge and the 30-day tapping challenge that I do every year in November and creating a summit. And all of those things had 2 purposes. One was to create something that was good and useful. And for those of you that consumed it, I hope I created something that was good and useful. And two, it was to learn about how I could run a business in this regard in a way that was going to allow me to be successful. And so after doing all of these experiments, I find myself in a position where last November, it was time to create the digital product. And it was time to create the webinar that would sell the digital product. And I'm in a coaching program and I'm getting lots of great advice and I'm getting lots of great help. And so I started working on that. And I started working on the program and the stories that I wanted to tell and the frameworks that I wanted to teach, because the webinar itself, it's now done, at least in a rough draft version of it. I've done a couple of times. I think it has really high value. That if you attend the webinar and at some point in the future you'll get a chance to do that, that you'll really learn something and it'll make your life better and you will be a better tapper because of it, even if you don't buy the offer at the end of it. And so as I started working on this, I set a goal for myself. And my goal was I wanted to sell $1 million in this digital product. It's a $500 product. So $1 million of a $500 product is $2,000. And I don't know if I've sold $2,000 of anything in my life, but that's what I decided to do. And it seemed reasonable, and the digital assets that I've put together, the training program, is so good. I'm so happy with it. It's tools that I use daily. It's not fluffy stuff. If you engage with this product set, if you follow the guides, if you use the tapping journal, if you let it hold your hand and you tap in a regular way, within a year, your life will be transformed. Like, that's not the thing I'm worried about. I'm so happy with the product. I can't wait for it to be in people's hands. But boy, is that a scary proposition. Because I've never been in a circumstance where I did a webinar that sold directly to a digital product, not to a sales conversation, not to something small, but to something big. And I was supposed to do the first launch of it in March. And something came up and it became April, and something came up and it became May. And I was like, they seemed like good logical reasons for all of that. And then I had been, over the course of the last year, just struggling with how I could respond to the refugees and the migration crisis that's happening in the world. And that's a much longer story that I can't get into here, but I had planned on doing one thing that I just didn't have the time for. And then one day I had this idea, well, what if I do a 24-hour tapathon and we could raise money for the Peaceful Heart Network, because they're doing this really amazing work. And originally it was just raise money for refugees cause, and then we got to the point where the Peaceful Heart Network was the right partner to be working with. And so I started reaching out to my peers and people I didn't know to get them on and all of this stuff. And it was a lot of work. One of my staff members, full-time, spent 10 weeks basically just working on that event. And don't get me wrong, every little bit of it was worthwhile. I am just thrilled beyond recognition that we raised $31,000 and we introduced the amazing work of the Peaceful Heart Network to thousands of people all over the world. And we created what I think was a really good 24 hours that if you go to 24hoursoftapping.com/playlist, you can see all 30 of the interviews. In January, myself and my team is going to get an opportunity to go to Rwanda, to go to Uganda, to do work alongside of the Peaceful Heart Network and show the amazing work that they're doing so we can raise $100,000 next year. All of that is awesome. And I should have done it next year. I shouldn't have done it this year, because I needed to be spending time and attention on the thing that was in front of me in my business. And basically what I did as a way of self-sabotaging myself so I didn't have to confront my fears about creating something and have it be rejected by my audience, I created a global tapping event that raised $31,000 and made a difference in the world because I was scared. Now, on some level, like, it's a pretty cool trade. Like, I could have done a lot worse things to sabotage myself as I was navigating all of this. I could have done things that were a waste of time. I could have done things that were harmful to my body. I could have done things that were numbing me out. I could have done things that I was hiding away. Like, I could have chosen a lot worse ways to self-sabotage. But the reality was I was. The person who spends all of his time and all of his attention working with people to eliminate self-sabotage was living daily in fear. And so the event ended. And the day after the event, my sister was in town because she's on my team, and we were having breakfast. And just because of the way our brains work, we couldn't help but just start debriefing. Now, we forgot half the things we said because we were so tired, but we immediately spent that week figuring out what we could do better and planning for next year because we're going to do it again next year. And then there was all the customer service responses of people who had made donation and hadn't got their gifts. And one of the gifts I managed to destroy and had to go retranscribe 19,000 words of trapping scripts. And like, there were all of these extra tasks that took up the next week and a half or two. And then it was done. And then as I was looking at my business, I realized that I hadn't really done anything to make any money in 2.5 months. Now, like, I'm fine. Like, don't worry about that. I know you're not worried about that. I am not worried about that. But even though I had cushion, I really should have been working on my business for 2.5 months. But what was more than that is I then had to look squarely in the eye the fact that I had been running away in my business. And I needed to fix that because it wasn't enough to just recognize the fact that I had been self-sabotaging. I then had to do something about it because naming the problem is a great first step, but it is only a first step. It is not creating transformation. And so I realized I had to do something. And so to get myself motivated, and maybe this is the point in our conversation today where we land at something that might be useful for you and not just some self-indulgent story of me wallowing in the fact that I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So the first thing I did is I created a hard deadline, a deadline that I could not move because I kept moving the beta test of this thing and I kept moving the beta test of this thing. And I decided I was no longer allowed to do that. And so I drew a line in the sand and I said, on August 25th, I'm going to do a beta version of this thing. The second thing I did was I realized that I needed to reconnect with why I wanted to do this thing. So simply deciding to create this product that I truly think is transformational, that will also help to transform me and my business, I needed to reconnect with the why I was creating that. And so every single morning what I started doing is when I sat down, I said out loud to myself, the reason why I'm creating this product for myself is, and talked about the business benefits for me in my life and my business. And the reason why I'm creating this product for the world is, and I talked about the impact that I hoped to have a product like that create. And so that was good. I had a deadline, I had motivation of the why, and then I had all of the fears. I've spent all of this time and energy in it, and it's not going to work out. People who have been following me for a really long time are going to think I've turned into a hypey, sleazy, salesy person. That they're not going to like it, that people are going to buy it and they're going to ask for refunds, that people are going to show up to the training and they're going to think I'm stupid. People aren't going to show up to the training. And so basically what I did was every single morning, I set a timer for 10 minutes and I just asked myself the question, what am I afraid of today? And I have never been that pointed in my trying to uncover what is going on. Typically, it's like I imagine myself taking the action and I tune into the fear of that particular action and I tap on it. And that's something I think is a really valuable thing. You know, it's transformed my life and it's transformed my business that I do that most mornings. But this is different. This was, I don't need to have a better relationship with my to-do list. This was, I had to go find those fears and I had to go unroot them, and I needed to get them out of the way so that I could do this thing. And so that's what I did. And so 2 weeks ago, I did the workshop for the first time. Last week, I did it for the second time. If you're on my mailing list at some point in the next couple of months, you're going to get an invitation because I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to get it better. So at some point, you're going to get an invitation for the 3 little-known secrets to awaken the intuitive tapping genius inside of you. And like I said, I think it's a really, really good training. And even though I've done it twice, I am still afraid. And so that means most mornings, not every morning, but most mornings when I sit down at my desk, I ask myself that pointed question, what are you afraid of? And the reason why that's a harder question to ask myself than imagining myself doing something and turning into the resistance is it's requiring self-analysis outside of the context of an action. And so it's not about me and the world, but it's about my interior world and where it is at this moment. And I don't think this is the approach that works all the time. Sometimes I think it's an approach that's too fast. But it's been a really new experience for me. And the cool thing is that as I've done that, I'm still just as afraid, tapping notwithstanding, making that fear go away. But the fear still exists. But I'm less afraid of the fear, or I'm less ashamed of the fear, or I'm less overwhelmed with the fear, that after directly asking myself, what are you afraid of today? It became like, well, what do you want with your coffee today? It was just a question that was an information gathering question. And with each passing day, the resistance and the embarrassment of being afraid and not taking action went away. And so even though the fear is still present, even though I'm still wrestling with it and transforming it and finding out who I am inside of all of this, I have a much better relationship with fear. And because I have a much better relationship with fear, I'm more comfortable inside of my own skin. I'm willing to be more honest with myself when I ask myself that question, what are you afraid of today? I'm significantly less judgmental of myself when I ask the question, what are you afraid of today? And so that is how being afraid and self-sabotaging myself, I ended up helping to raise $31,000 for a really amazing cause. And I've learned lots and lots of lessons about myself along the way, and I've recognized how much more tapping I have to do. And I am so excited for you, if you haven't seen it yet, to get a chance to experience this webinar and to get experience the thing that is on the other side of that webinar. Because I truly believe if you're just bumping into this thing a couple of times a week, your life will be better. And that's why I do all of this stuff. I do it so that internally I can transform myself, and externally I get an opportunity to share that with the world. So I hope that reflection was useful for you. If it was not, come back for our next episode where we're going to do some tapping, where I'm going to interview someone awesome, or go back into our back catalog. Somewhere in the 537 episodes before this, you can find one that isn't just about me, but something that you can find useful. If you did find it useful, I would love to hear that. I'm hesitant to share stuff like this because I don't know if I'm just like doing my own therapy into the microphone or if me sharing my experience is something that is helpful. I ask that as an honest question. So if you enjoyed the conversation, please reach out. Let me know. I can be reached at support@tappingqna.com. I get all of those email messages, even though they head to a support inbox. Or if you click on the contact link on the website, you can drop me a note from there. If there's someone in your life who you might actually think would enjoy a conversation like this, please be our ambassador. Our word of mouth, or our marketing budget is your word of mouth. And so if you know one or two people out there who might enjoy a reflection like this, please pass it along. Don't spam your inbox. And even if they don't listen to me, even if they don't listen to this podcast, the fact that you reached out and said, hey, I'm thinking of you today. This might make your day a little bit brighter. That's going to make their day brighter, which is just going to make the world a better place for all of us. And every single time I say it, it sounds cheesy. And every single time I go, yeah, it's cheesy because it's true. When I was in high school, we had a English teacher who taught us AP English, who was revered, kind of like the Dead Poet Society teacher, just loved. And one day in class, we were reflecting on a piece of literature, and Mr. Ring called on me, and I gave my response, and he said, Gene, are you really that much of a sentimental ass? And everybody in the classroom kind of in shock clutched their chest, and you could hear everybody inhale. And I thought about it for a moment, and I said, yeah, I actually am. And he's like, okay, that's fine. And I just realized that, yeah, I really am that cheesy. And so I know that you reaching out to someone else is going to make their day brighter. And I'm okay with that being a little bit cheesy. If you haven't subscribed to the show, I'd encourage you to do so. For the Tapping Q&A podcast, subscribe is free. You can get the show basically everywhere you get audio online. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pandora, Spotify, Audible, Amazon Music. Just search Tapping Q&A. Wherever you find the show, click follow, click subscribe, whatever it is in that app. But most importantly, turn on the notifications so that when a new episode comes out, you find out right away. You don't miss out on that opportunity, and you can hear an interview with amazing transformational professional, or you can do some tapping right then and there, and it's just right there on your phone waiting for you. Like I said, we have 537 episodes just sitting in that archive. So if you go to tappingpodcast.com, you can enjoy those. For the Tapping Q&A podcast, Gene Montrestelli, I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you real soon. Bye-bye. The Tapping Q&A podcast is copyright Gene Montrestelli Tapping Q&A. All views expressed by guests are those of the guests and not necessarily of Gene Montrestelli and Tapping Q&A.